Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. We really do appreciate it. My name is Scott Siphon on the marketing team here at Moxa, and I'll be helping moderate this session. So today is actually the second of a three-part webinar series that we're doing on industrial connectivity. We'll spend about 20-25 minutes exploring the topic specifically around industrial networking. Before I get started, I do have one housekeeping item to mention. Just like last week, we will be doing a Q&A session at the very end of the presentation. So feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A window at the very bottom of your screen. I'll gather those up and then I'll ask those to our presenters again at the very end of the presentation. All right, with that said, let me introduce our presenters today. David, if you can go to the next slide.
Sure thing.
So first off, we have Todd Desso. Todd is our strategic business manager here at Moxa. Been here for over 13 years, so he's a vet, and has been in the industrial space for well over 23 years. He has held a variety of roles in sales, product marketing, and field application engineering. Alongside Todd, we do have David Garcia. David has been with Moxa for about 5 years. But he does have over 15 years of technical networking experience. David, too, has held many roles in sales, product marketing, and tech support. So together between them, a lot of experience around the topic of networking. So we're really excited to get them on here and share that experience with all of you today. All right, without further ado, let me hand things over to Todd Desso to get us started. Todd?
Thanks, Scott. Good day, everyone. For those that joined last week, welcome back. If this is your first time with us, welcome to the Moxa Industrial Connectivity webinar series. As Scott noted, this is the second of 3 webinars that Moxa will be hosting over the next several weeks. Although these sessions will be short in their duration, they will touch on a number of key points in which we hope to generate additional discussion, which can be more specific to your needs and challenges. We've lined up a solid group of speakers for this series. I'm confident you will find them both knowledgeable and practical as it relates to the topics. Today, we will be discussing industrial networking. We will touch on trends, challenges commonly faced. We will review the Moxa solutions and how we can collaborate with each other. And we will conclude with a Q&A session. So with that, without further ado, I would like to introduce my friend, colleague, and someone that probably needs a haircut equally as valuable. Mr. David Garcia. David.
Thanks, Todd. Yes, that's true. I do have my quarantine cough, as I'm going to be trademarking that term. But I will make no apologies for it. We're all struggling through and making the best of what we can. I wanted to start this presentation off today with a really cool quote that I think is very timely because it's talking about people adapting much quicker to change because of information they get. So the quote is, "Anything that can be measured can be improved." Now, anecdotally, I guess to me, what that means is that technology is providing simple ways to improve our lives. Take for instance, my watch. I have a step counter. It reminds me to get up and move when I've been sitting at my desk for way too long. So it helps me to make better decisions, right? But that's on a personal level. How does this actually relate to the landscape of business, right? So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. And in order to understand that, you need a little background, right? So let's talk about some trends that are affecting business. So obviously IoT is driving a demand for more information to devices. There's obviously an increase in smart device connectivity as well as legacy integration, right? We're talking about eliminating those islands of automation. And obviously we're talking about easier access and more information. You're going to be obviously moving to the logical next step, which is industrial cybersecurity. All right, so now that we talked about those trends that are out there, let's talk about how those actually affect business and what are the business drivers that are actually affecting the adoption at a much quicker pace. So number one, you have the fact that you have improving overall efficiency, you have improving productivity, you have the ability to create new business opportunities, right? All that data, you can now use it to add value to your customers that are buying your equipment, right? There's also reducing downtime. Really, what all of these really come down to are just 2 things. So that's process improvement and predictive maintenance. So that's really what's going on here. So let's talk about why people are so jazzed about predictive maintenance, right? So This is a study that was conducted by the Federal Department of Energy, the US Department of Energy, and basically this took a look at both the traditional approach versus a predictive maintenance approach. Now, what they found was there was a 10x factor on the ROI, right? But the really cool thing about this study is the fact that you got these incredible gains in productivity and these reductions in downtimes, but you got all of this without any Excel sheets, without having clipboards or sneakerwear or having to, drive to Timbuktu with a giant stick to climb up a ladder on top of a giant well to check to see what the levels were, right? So this is really awesome, and it's really starting to kind of make people reconsider, how great the benefits are of IoT. But I've definitely painted you a very rosy picture. But I think that we should reel it in a little bit, because this is why we're here today. We're going to be talking about the challenges involved with anybody that's on their path to a lot of this IoT adoption, right? So let's start off right off the bat. Harsh environments. The industrial environments are really harsh. We're not just talking about wide temperature, vibration. We're also talking about, high voltage, some harsh chemicals. These places can be pretty nasty. So reliability is often an issue for a lot of these applications. Now let's talk about the complexity. We talked about how awesome it was to be able to include all these additional vibration sensors and these smart technologies. And obviously, networks are growing. So this is outpacing the expertise of your typical controls engineer. So it's becoming more complicated and a lot more difficult for them to manage. And then you're talking about interoperability. So you have fancy new dashboard, you have all this access to information, but what about the old stuff that's currently on your plant floor or on your production, right? You're talking about homebrew stuff that doesn't have driver support. Maybe the developer left. Maybe the company you bought it from was 25 years ago and they're out of business, right? So you're left back in square one. You can't integrate that stuff. So you're back to island of automation. Maybe you standardize on a protocol like Ethernet IP and you have a lot of Modbus or some other proprietary serial protocol, right? The easy answer to that would be like, let's slap an IP address on it. Well, if you start slapping IP addresses, unfortunately, to a lot of this old, serial legacy stuff or IO, what happens is it was never intended to be online. So you could have inadvertently created a vulnerability because you might have flat networks that don't have proper segmentation. And so now the easy access to that creates, a really scary situation for you if you're not careful. So network security is a big one as well.
David, it's interesting. Network security is identified as both a trend and a challenge. It's definitely something we navigate through with our customers on a regular basis. So let's dive into the networking portfolio if we could, and discuss how we address those trends and challenges. So we're highlighting here the 200 series and 300 series switches. These are the foundation of our unmanned switch portfolio and utilized in a wide variety of applications. Yeah,
no, definitely. So we have a huge portfolio of unmanaged switches that just fit about every need. You're talking about high port density to gigabit to certifications like Class 1 Div 2, PoE Plus. We have you covered. We have a really huge portfolio of unmanaged switches, and we've also have a couple of new switches that we've added to our product line, which is our EDS 2000 ML line. So the cool thing about this is that this is an evolution. We've added a managed switch feature, which is called QoS, which helps with prioritizing traffic. So it gives you that added benefit of being able to help with a lot of the network traffic that you have on there. So we felt this was a really good addition to our switch portfolio.
Yeah, we definitely have seen a spike in our customers' interest in managed switches. But when you engage into a managed switch integration or discussion, there's hurdles. While some instances we have our customers that are hesitant, a lot of times it's their customer, the end customer, that doesn't want the managed switch. And I'm not sure if it's fear or a lack of understanding.
Well, it's I honestly feel it's a little bit of both. And okay. I like to use this slide that I call the managed switch evolution, because before you actually start to discuss, managed switches and, helping your customers understand the value proposition, there is a lot of fear. You're right, because, you need to understand not who buys these, but why they buy these, right? So that's really where you should start the conversation. And to be honest, the only reason people buy in managed switches is because of cost and ease of use. Those are the main draws for them, right? So what I found that's interesting is that when you're talking about somebody that's going through this evolution to a fully managed switch, it typically starts like this. You have somebody that has the need to connect more devices, so they'll usually up the port density of their unmanaged switches, right? Then they decide, you know what, I have these systems now and I have a lot more need to gather that information, so I need to have more throughput so I can have easier time accessing all that additional information. Well, when you do that, because it's an unmanaged switch, then you have to start worrying about security, right? Now that you have all that access, you need to make sure that you are able to mitigate who exactly has the access. So that's usually the tipping point. But even when they get to that point and they go like, yes, you're right, security is going to be the reason why I need to move up, they still have a couple more obstacles: ease of use, right, and cost. So those are definitely the other additional obstacles you'll find along this journey. But if this is you, or if this happens to be one of your customers, I have really good news for you, because we have a really great switch that's very cost effective and has, you know, a lot of the network features that you need for industrial networking specifically. And it's a great way for somebody to start dipping their toe into the managed switch pool. So we're talking about a small switch that has, you know, industrial profiles built in, which is pretty important because you can tie this to your existing backbone for your industrial network. It also has some basic network security. It doesn't have a lot of security, but it at least gives you the ability to do things like, you know, lock down your ports, make sure that just because there's a port open on your panel, no one's just going to connect it because it's there, and it's easy to use. So it's cost effective, and a lot of the features are all enabled on a simple dashboard that is on one page. So this is really what you're looking at right here. This is it, right? This is it in a nutshell. You can see the switch information. If you want to enable, you know, the industrial profiles, you want to get some visibility with SNMP, you want to do a little segmentation, maybe some redundancy, right? It's all there. It's really easy to configure, and you can see switch log information for events. So you're not going to need to break the bank, and you're not going to need an ITDV to use it. So this is an awesome place to start for sure.
Yeah, that's a good overview on the smart switches. So let's discuss when a customer's needs shift to a full-featured managed switch.
Okay.
You know, here we're looking at the 500E switch. We're highlighting, you know, it really is our workhorse switch. And I don't want to minimize some of these features, but I think a lot of customers understand the SCADA HMI integration being seamless with our switches. They're familiar with network redundancy specific to Moxa, turbo ring, turbo chain, and whether it's fast Ethernet, gigabit, PoE, 5-port, 28-port, the options are there. Let's break it down. What are the key points that are critical to their solution and ensuring a strong user experience?
Well, again, it's going to have to be ease of use and security, 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 right? And we actually highlight on a lot of our network devices and many of our products ISA 99, IEC 62443. But I've been traveling around and I've talked to a lot of customers, and it's surprising to me how many people don't even know what that standard is, right? And the reason why I want to give a little background here is because there's a lot of industry standards that are going to give you, you know, best practices. Some are, you know, vertical market related, power, NERC SIP. You have some that are very IT specific. But if you really want to understand, you know, what policy to start following or what you should start looking at to give you some guidance, I like to use the analogy of baking a cake, right? If you're going to bake a cake, the best place to start is to find a recipe. So we want you to follow a recipe that's going to give you a very secure, fluffy, beautiful, chocolatey cake, right? So IEC 62443 is a place to start if that's the case. And the reason for that is because it's been defined and comprised specifically for industrial control systems, right? So as you can see, there's overlap, but if you look to the right, IEC 62443 by far has the most when it comes to the device level. So it's not just the IT side, it's the device level, which is more concerning for somebody who does industrial networking. So now, with that background, the fact that I tell you, hey, my switches are designed to follow the standard of IEC 62443, let me give you a little bit of background on that as well. So you can see what features were baked in, pun intended, on the 500E. You're talking about user authentication. You're talking about data integrity and confidentiality, right? Encrypting the configuration data, anything that's transmitted over the wire, network access control and authentication. You know, these are all really important and they're there. But just like I said before, just because it has all the managed features, which everybody knows a managed switch is going to have more security, it's still not going to be easy to use. Well, we actually help you out with that as well, because we actually created a really simple to use, friendly user interface, a web GUI, that has access to all of the features, right? You don't need to know command line interface to access the higher end features. They're all there. So if you know you can work your way around that, it's easy for you to understand. But if you also have your IT department that's actually in charge of helping you with the configuration, deployment, maintenance, they can use command line menu-based communication if that's what they're more familiar with or what they like to use. So you can leverage either or. The other thing I wanted to point out as far as easy and recovering from some kind of a disaster, you have a lot of customers that have a fully managed switch that's on their network. And what happens if that thing, there's a lightning strike or a voltage spike of some kind, and your stuff is fried, right? That's going to be happening usually when does stuff like that usually happen, Todd?
2 a.m. production line running at full capacity. Yeah. Always the worst possible time.
Exactly. So how awesome would it be if that was the case? If you had a ability to be able to bring your stuff online again, a fully managed switch, by having a little USB dongle that has the configuration saved on it, right? You plug it in, and then you power up your device, and it's back up and running, right? That's awesome. That's what's called peace of mind, right? You're going to make it easier for your customers to not freak out. If they're your end user you're supporting, you can get a phone call telling you, hey, we weren't down, but we're back online. Let's talk tomorrow. That's what you want to get. The other thing is, obviously, if you have a managed switch, how about some centralized network management with that, right? It's really difficult for a lot of people that have a typical scenario where they have a system integrator that's given them a full, managed switch network, and then now 5 months, 6 months, a year has gone by. They don't know that spreadsheet has it been updated, up to date. Is there new devices that have been added? So this gives you a really easy way with a graphical interface to see exactly what's on your network, what it's connected to, how it's connected. So it's really good information. Also configuration management. Again, I mentioned about disaster recovery, but what about like just day to day? Do you have the time to do the backups of your working devices, of known working configurations? Probably not, right? Nobody has time. So how about if you're able to automate it? That way you don't have to worry about a newbie that made a configuration change or a firmware update that broke everything, which by the way happens more frequently than we care to admit. So these are part of it. The other thing is the security side. So, you can do security policy audits. You can do event detection and logging with MXView Security View. This is awesome because if you have adopted a policy like IEC 62443, how do you enforce it? How do you know if it's being followed, right? You can do a policy audit and you can see in graphical, easy to understand, plain English. These are the IEC 62443, the different levels of it. These are color-coded. This is what they mean. So you can update misconfigured devices. You actually might have the devices that you need to protect your network, but you might not have them configured properly. So you can track newly added devices. You had that replacement. Maybe somebody just added one on and didn't fully do it the way it's supposed to. You can get configuration change notifications, authentication failures, all that good stuff. So this is really important for anybody that's trying to get a handle on their network.
Okay, David, those are definitely good points to ensure a solid user experience. So we are planning to do a webinar just on cybersecurity. However, in addition to the security features within the switches, I was hoping you could provide a little insight into architecting a secure network. Earlier in the presentation, you noted about the challenges with legacy devices being added to a flat network without segmentation.
Correct.
Would you mind elaborating on that a little bit?
Sure. I think this is very, very, very useful for our customers to know. So when you're talking about IEC 62443, part of that standard is a process called defense in depth, right? So essentially what you're doing is you're doing three things. You're going to be segmenting your network, right? This is awesome because you don't have to worry about a breach to a single point, like we mentioned earlier, if it's flat, giving that person who was on your network access to all of your network, right? So you're going to be protecting and being able to keep working even though you might have had a breach. Additionally, it also has benefits of being able to give you better performance in your devices because there's less chatter. The other part of it is whitelisting and filtering the communication between your zones. So you have your cells, each one of them has their router that's protecting them, isolating the traffic. but now those zones also have additional whitelisting and filtering, right? And then the last one is obviously one that's very important today, especially, is the need for remote access. So if you have the ability to provide secure remote access, it's going to be really vital to your organization, because everybody's looking for this nowadays. And this is a really simple way to approach that defense in depth. So we have a quick guide here. We have a really simple portfolio of 3 different routers. If I had to start anywhere, and just the bare minimum you can do is get the EDR 810. This is our hero product. This is actually a kind of Swiss Army knife of network device security devices. This gives you a fully managed switch with router capabilities, so you can do things like NATing. You know, it's just really great. It also helps you protect if you have industrial protocols like Modbus, which are notoriously unsafe and unsecure. The other way is the EDR G902, which is a really, really simple product to just be able to put between your zones, right, to allow additional filtering and firewall protection. And then the last one is our EDR G903. This one's really great because not only does it allow the ability to allow access to your outside network, it helps you by creating what's called a DMZ. This is a demilitarized zone. Essentially, it's a safe place where your information can be sent upstream from your production to be stored in a safe location, which can then be accessed by anybody outside your network. That could be your, your ERP system, your MES system, or just whoever needs to get access to it, your cloud, whatever, your SCADA system. So that way you prevent the need to have to go all the way down from the top to the bottom production level and just make sure that they get the access to the information they really need without adding the additional liability. And then the last thing I'll add just really here, if this has been interesting to you and you want more information, highly suggest that you download our cybersecurity checklist. It talks a little bit about our secure devices, like I mentioned earlier, secure network design and security management, but it also has a really cool checklist that you can use to kind of help gauge where you are and maybe even help your end users understand the benefits of applying a lot of these cybersecurity policies. So yeah, that's all I got. So thank you very much, guys. I'll pass it over to Todd so we can take
David, that was awesome. Thank you. Excellent insight. And to the audience, we will provide the security checklist link in our follow-up email. So that said, let's move to the Q&A session. Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you. How are we looking on questions here?
All right.
All easy ones go to me. All hard ones go to the application engineers and Dave.
That is my intention. Yeah, thanks, Todd. All right. So, hey, before we get to the first question, like Todd mentioned, we did invite our field application engineers to this, just in case there are overly technical questions, which there are a few. So if you hear them, that's who they are. So, and then one other thing, a couple questions have come in regarding, are we going to share the presentation or the recording afterwards? The answer is yes. We will email this out to anyone that registered. So be on the lookout for an email from us in the next day or so. All right, so with that said, let me get to the first question. I see you have 3 different security routers. Besides the difference in speeds, is there any other reason to choose one over the other?
I can take that one. So this is Mike. Yeah, there actually is. So there's 3 different routers, and each one of them has some unique features. So if you look at the, oh, thanks. Yeah, if you look at the 903, one of the features that's unique to it is dual WAN capability. So what that allows you to do is to have 2 different ISPs, for example, linking you up to the cloud or linking you up to wherever you're monitoring your field device from. So one of those could be a landline link that you want to use as a primary, and the other one might be satellite. It might be cellular or something that has a high cost involved with it. So that particular model can monitor the connectivity over the ISP connections, and if the primary goes down, it can switch over to use your second, maybe more high cost option until the primary link comes back up, and then it'll switch back over. So it's very cost effective for massive field deployments, where you would need that redundancy like that. The 810 is really the Swiss Army knife. It can do lots of different things. The 902 is a little bit unique in that there's just 2 interfaces on it. So it makes it very easy to program. So for example, if you had a safety system that you wanted to firewall off from a digital control system, it's very simple to set that device up as a transparent firewall or bridge firewall that just inspects the traffic that's flowing between the safety system and the control system, and just firewalling within the same subnet. So and it's very easy to set up. So I hope that helps.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the detail on that question. So the next question comes in. What insights can you share with us about how industrial networks will change in the future with private 5G and LTE networks when those are adopted? Do we have an answer for that?
Well, I guess, from a Moxa perspective, we're looking at future technology and how to implement that in our products. Right now, in this webinar, we're just talking about switching products and, unmanaged switches, managed switches, and NAT routers and things of that nature. So this might be a question that's better answered in one of our other webinars where we cover cloud connectivity and cellular connectivity.
I agree.
Yep, sounds good. All right, next question. What troubleshooting features are available with your unmanaged switches?
Okay, so unmanaged switches, they're kind of, the least common denominator when it comes to networking. So really, there's not a lot that you can do when it comes to troubleshooting. If you think about an unmanaged switch, you've got just ports that are providing, connectivity to the device, and then some LEDs that are showing you things like, is the, link up, down, is it, basically that's it. So you can tell the speed of the link, and you can tell whether or not you have, a cable connected.
Or relays. I think that's really all the diagnostic stuff you can do really to get any kind of troubleshooting, right, Mike?
Right. The relay output is there as well. So you could monitor, I think the 308 model, you could monitor that with a PLC through some digital I/O and know in your control system when one of the ports has been disconnected or down. But it's really one of the primary reasons why customers will migrate to a managed solution. The managed solution gives you, because it has a user interface and that you can log into it, you can get switch port statistics, you can get errors and a breakdown of the kinds of errors that might be seen on a port, speed, duplex, and graphing capabilities to look at, what does the traffic look like? What's the mix of unicast, multicast, broadcast, things of that nature. So, unmanaged switches are great. They're set it and forget it. When they do leave something to, be desired when it comes to troubleshooting, network issues.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Mike. So quick time check. We have a couple minutes left. We'll try and get through 2 more questions. What level of protection do Moxa unmanaged switches have?
Level of protection? That would be none.
Well, I can take that one, David.
Yeah. Go for it, Mario.
Yeah, so basically we do have a couple features with our unmanaged switches that will protect from broadcast storms as well as from loopback. So if somebody accidentally loops up the switch in configuration when they're actually installing the device, it won't take down that network segment. So basically, we do have some precautions for devices that we want to be able to throttle back if the devices are communicating too much.
That's called broadcast storm protection, by the way, for anybody that's not familiar with that technology.
Yeah, so there is some protections that we do have on our layer 2 switches.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mario.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get one more question before we sign off. It just came in. Do the managed switches allow for different routing protocols? RIPv2, OSPF.
Yeah, I can take that as well. Okay, so we have 2 different types of managed switches out there. You have the layer 2 switches, correct? And then you actually have a layer 3 switch. Some of our layer 2 switches can recognize that traffic, but our layer 3 switches can actually participate in those routing protocols. So you would, if you're looking to participate in those routing protocols, you would go with the layer 3 switch.
Simple answer. Okay, thank you, Mario.
Yep.
So there are other questions. We'll gather these up once we have a little bit more time offline. We'll reach back out to those that submitted those questions and make sure that you're taken care of. But as far as the webinar, Todd, let me hand it back over to you to wrap us up.
Okay. Thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. We appreciate the continued opportunity to support you and your efforts. The feedback we received from last week's session was great. Please keep it coming. We learned from the feedback. Also, don't hesitate to visit www.moxa.com for product technology and application insight, or reach out to your local Moxa sales representative. Next week, May 14th, we will be doing a webinar on industrial computing and IIoT. Super exciting. It's a great session, and I think there's a lot to be learned. We'll discuss industrial edge, panel computers, IIoT, and implementation best practices. So until then, please, everyone, stay well. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.